Welcome to Industry Insiders, created and produced by the Center for Entertainment and Hospitality Management at California State University, Fullerton. During this series, we sit down with influential professionals in the entertainment and hospitality industries that are located across the world. Our goal is to learn about each professional's career and gain wisdom from their experience in the industry. This week's guest is Darren Jones. Darren is Executive Director of Enterprise Technology at the Walt Disney Company. In his role, he manages the enterprise technology client engagement teams that provide solutions, services, strategies, roadmaps, investments, and relationships in support of several of Disney's business segments. He is a CSUF Finance Alumnus and is president of the CSUF Alumni Association. Please join us as we welcome Darren Jones.
All right, so welcome to our Season 2 premiere of Industry Insiders. I'd like to welcome Darren Jones to our virtual stage. How are we doing today?
Excellent. By the way, I was watching on my phone that intro video on YouTube, and that was really cool. Congratulations on good production.
Okay, well, you hear it. Myra Encinas is behind the scenes, one of our executive producers. She produced that video. Also, Jessica Nicole Cruz is our voice actress. So we're all in-house. So with that, I want to introduce our co-host, Paige Frank. How are we doing today, Paige?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Yes, we're excited to have both of you here. I'm going to let Paige start off because she's got a couple great intro questions, and then we'll go back and forth. If you're in the audience, please feel free to leave a comment, leave a question, and we're going to have an interactive experience. So Paige, take it away.
All right. So, Mr. Jones, one of my first questions is, would you mind giving us a bit of a description as to all that your role at the Walt Disney Company encompasses?
Yeah, so Disney's massive, of course, right? And I sit in corporate. And so corporate at Disney is not different than what you would expect of any Fortune 500 in that corporate services everything across Disney, right? So someone who works in theme parks may only focus on theme parks, but if you're in corporate, whether that's finance, human relations, real estate management, technology like me, controllership, so I'm in that bubble that services everything in Disney. And for me, the primary part of the job is to ensure that the technology that we provide, which is used across all of Disney, is relevant, cost-effective, scalable, and supports the business objectives of Disney. And in enterprise technology, the division I'm in, we provide everything from the computer on your desk to the cloud services that host applications and data, and everything in between. And it is a massive operation of a couple thousand people, and very large budgets and very large responsibilities, and it is cool. And I have teams embedded with all of our businesses, right? So I have folks that are located in our theme parks and in ESPN and in our direct-to-consumer division. And that means they are directly connected to the business and making sure that the technology we're providing is effective. And so, yeah, that's what I do.
Go ahead. You can go ahead with Paige again.
I was just going to say that seems like you've got your hands in a lot of different areas of Disney. As you said, it really incorporates everything that they're involved in. So how do you manage essentially leading, or at least ensuring the leadership of all of those different teams?
Yeah, so I would say there's 3 points to that. Number one is we first make sure that we actually are aligned to business objectives. And so that's something we do with regular all hands meetings, where we make sure that wherever Disney Plus is heading, or whether we look at Pixar and where they're heading, where are we heading with any of our businesses? And by the way, we bought 20th Century Fox entertainment assets a little over a year and a half ago. And we're also having to integrate them. So if you think of Searchlight and you think of FX, we also became the owners of Nat Geo, right? So first thing is I am making sure that we're aligned to what the business objectives are. And so that's a part of a continuous ongoing process. Number two, it is making sure that I actually treat my folks as individuals. For someone to be really, really effective at their job, you actually need to know them. And some people are more comfortable with disclosure than others, right? And different personality styles, but I tried to know as much as I can about, especially my leadership, my director levels. But all the way down, I do skip levels down every level in my organization to eventually touch base with everybody. Because, people have passions, they have emerging interests. And so I always want to make sure that I have the right people aligned based on where their heart is, because Disney is such a complex organization. And I want to make sure that alignment exists. That creates natural motivation. And then the third thing in leadership is to be positive, right? We are looking at a very distressed global economic environment. We are looking at Disney having plenty of distressed businesses right now that are a result of COVID. And so I think a seminal trait of optimism is both, or a seminal trait of leadership is both optimism and also, by the way, vulnerability. People perceive that if you're in a leadership role, if you're in an executive role, that everything is always great and awesome. And I think you also need to make yourself vulnerable so that people appreciate your leadership and recognize, that you're human and you're experiencing some of what they are. I think that creates a bit of camaraderie, and leadership should have camaraderie too.
You mentioned that a seminal characteristic of leadership is optimism. How have you been able to remain optimistic in the past 7 months?
Yeah. Well, first, we are still running the Walt Disney Company successfully, despite the economic conditions. And, in all honesty, right, we have had layoffs, and those were in the news in the last week. But, the thing is, we can be optimistic because on the other end of this is a vaccine. On the other end of this is COVID becoming certainly a much more minor issue in the scope of the world. And what we know sits on the other side of that is truly like a rainbow, right? We will be able to have all of our theme park businesses, our television and streaming businesses, our live sports businesses. We will be able to get back there. And so what I really remind folks, is that we now have multiple vaccines in stage 3 trials. We are now nearing the end of uncertainty. I think we're going to, soon see the world start to be able to peek back out safely and engage in full-scale business activity. So there's that, but that's looking forward, and we always need that, right? Optimism sort of comes with what lies ahead. I think in the last 7 months, the other thing is to be proud of who the Walt Disney Company is. We have the greatest collection of intellectual property in the world. We're one of the most world's beloved brands. We are still an absolutely massive employer. There's a whole lot to be positive when you have those attributes that aren't going away, right? I mean, we didn't sell off any assets, even though we've had to close some businesses, we've had to significantly slow down TV and motion picture production. We didn't shed Marvel, we didn't shed Star Wars, we didn't shed ESPN, we didn't shed anything, right? These things are all part of us. And so I think there's that. And then finally, the third element of how I've been able to keep optimism in the last 7 months is there is something to be proud of to have been a part of this moment in time, which is unprecedented. I am in my 50s. Certainly I have not lived through anything like this. No one my age has. That we were a significant part. Technology has played a heck of a huge role in Disney moving from traditional business models of being in offices and sound stages and studios. We have pivoted all the way to virtual and remote, and we were a huge, huge part of enabling that capability. That's something we can all be proud of.
Nice. How has your day-to-day job changed since COVID, and what have you done to manage your workload so it doesn't bleed over into like your personal life, so you still have some balance while working remotely?
Yeah, biggest changes. My normal patterns would be on a typical weekday. By the way, I live in Fullerton, very close to the campus. And I would normally get to the Metrolink station bright and early in the morning, take it out to Burbank, where my office is located in traditional times. I don't do that right now, right? We have very few people in our properties. So that changed. The other part of it is I was on the road a lot, right? So I would be in Bristol, Connecticut, where ESPN's headquarters are. I would be in Manhattan, where Disney has significant businesses. I would be in London, England. I would be in Florida, where my office at Walt Disney World is. I would be up in the Bay Area, where Lucasfilm and Pixar are, right? So I'm not getting on airplanes, and I'm not going to those locations. So that's, those are the travel and commute aspects that have changed. The other part I think that's changed, there's going to be 3 parts. Part number 2, it's really cool that I have a half-hour break in between meetings that I can run to my own downtown to restaurants where I know the owners and it's my community, and I can grab something quickly for lunch and swing back home and eat it. Part of work life was you would be separated from where you lived and your community for long stretches of the day. And so I actually feel strangely more connected to, everything
Interesting.
because proximity is there. Finally, the third thing, is work-life balance you asked about. There is none right now.
Yeah.
So, that may as well just be honest. Things are happening continuously 7 days a week. We are one of the world's largest companies. Folks may not know, when you think of the Dow Industrial Average, Disney is one of those 30 stocks. The sun never sets on Disney's businesses ever. So, the job already was that way. And, during COVID, we've had to make a lot of spontaneous on the fly efforts. And that kind of just means work-life balance changes. That being said, very important, we have all come to accept that occasionally a cat will come into your screen on Zoom, or someone will deliver a package to your front door and the dogs bark. Or whatever. I think we've also just come to really accept that, if you will, I'm going to use the term professionalism. Professionalism used to be, I'm showing up, I'm buttoned up, I've got it all together. There are no distractions. And now we just know that our personal and business lives are completely intertwined via the magic of, Zoom or Teams or whatever tool you're using.
Yeah.
And we're peering into each other's lives in ways we never did before. And, in a way, it humanizes us, which is all good.
Awesome. So I'm going to go to one question from the audience. Also, audience members, as you're watching, feel free to put comments and questions in. We'll get to you. And then I'm going to, after this question, Paige will ask some of hers. So we have a question from Vanessa Ramirez. Hello, Vanessa. Thank you for tuning in. What after effects do you think will be the hardest to overcome post-COVID?
Yeah, so certainly when we think of our in-person businesses, people going to movie theaters to watch our films, people going to our theme parks to experience, Disney parks, and right, that's a global business. Shanghai, Hong Kong, Japan, Paris, Florida, here, our cruise business, right, where we, have a cruise business. That's going to be the first thing that will be difficult to overcome, is the relaxation of travel bans, people having the economic means to invest in our product, even going to a movie, let alone a more expensive thing like a 7-night Walt Disney World vacation, for example, or Europeans flying over back into the United States when travel bans lift and they can come here. But same thing, right? Feeling comfortable, feeling that the virus is under control, people having economic capacity. That's going to be the hardest part. Here's the thing that I thought was going to be really, really hard that's turning out to be less hard. We have a lot of emerging productions, episodic shows, right? Where you're shooting 10 episodes, 22 episodes. Our creative teams are doing some really amazing work in terms of finding out how to get back on set safely and with camera angles, making people look like they're side by side, but they're really 8 foot apart, right? And so, I think because of that, you're seeing more production emerge across the entire industry. And I thought that was going to really inhibit production for years to come. And really, I think it's less of an issue. Here's the other thing too. Employees now have an expectation that they can live, maybe not completely, so maybe I'm going to overstate this. Many employees feel like, I've proven I can work from anywhere, right? I went with the wife to Las Vegas for the week, and I was putting in my day at the Bellagio by day and serving Disney, and then by night, my wife and I would go down and safely gamble or safely dine. And so I think that we're all going to have to go through a transition of what's the right balance at work, and what's the purpose of an office. And the insinuations that if you're not in an office, you're not achieving your total productivity, or you don't have all the tooling you needed, largely has been dispelled for many parts of the world. I mean, imagine this, Disney's quarter closes. Again, right, we're a Dow Industrial, we are a mega corporation. The company had never done a quarter close from people's living rooms, right? They were in controllership buildings, consolidating multiple massive general ledgers and with currency and other exchange factors and eliminations and everything at huge scale across this vast business, where we were still ingesting the Fox assets that we had bought, and all that moved to people's living rooms, right?
Yes.
So, I just think we're all at Disney going to have to figure out what's the right balance of people being on a property versus not. And in some cases, people that you used to see every day in Burbank may now live on a ranch in Denver, and that may be absolutely awesome, right? So I think that's going to be the big thing. We have seen big tech companies like the Microsofts and Googles and Twitters have largely said, we'll never go back the way we used to. Disney isn't there yet. We haven't made any such pronouncements, but we are going to be tackling it. I think that's one of the big post-COVID changes.
Interesting. Thank you. Paige, over to you.
So you've mentioned how work is changing, that expectation of working at work and working remotely not being available. But now that that is no longer an option, and with the current world that we're living in, what skills are you finding to be most valuable in yourself and in the people around you?
Well, I'm going to actually answer something that may not sound right or obvious, but humor.
Okay.
Right, because we are all working in what we would have considered 8 months ago compromised situations. And we've learned that the new normal actually can be successful. But I think humor is certainly one of those skills that has become appreciated when we sort of bring levity to the seriousness of work. Like I said, the cat showing up on the screen, and rather than people getting angry, people will pop jokes, they'll introduce their own animal onto the screen, right? Things like that. Humor helps. But the skill that, in fact, I was just talking to one of my staff just before this began, as we're talking about year-end reviews. And the thing I'm asking all my staff to do in their year-end self-reflection, and then I go in and create my own review on top of their self-reflection, I'm asking everyone to make sure that they highlight adaptability, creativity. That is what we've all had to do this year. And so did we accomplish what we've planned for our fiscal year 20 goals? Well, heck no. I mean, COVID hit, right? Mm-hmm. But what we did do is demonstrate that given circumstances that were emerging, by the day, hour, minutes, sometimes seconds, literally, that we all found the strength and ingenuity in us to solve things that we never had been able or never knew we had to solve before. And so I think that's it. It's ingenuity. It's the creativity that comes with ingenuity. It's accepting deviation from norms, embracing it, empowering it. Those are the things that we should be recognizing now and celebrating. That's the skill that will keep us going until COVID is, in the rearview mirror.
To continue along that line of thinking, what skills could many of our students, such as Paige, who is graduating in May, what skills could they look to be acquiring now while we have a little bit more downtime that you might look for when you're interviewing new hires moving forward?
Yeah, well, first of all, you want to recognize that who you are being interviewed by has been impacted by this, right? So you're not looking or being interviewed by people that are Teflon, that COVID didn't have an impact on them, either personally and or in their profession. So I think you always want to come prepared to talk about how you as a student, and we know that, right, Cal State Fullerton has been virtual and will remain virtual for the near term at least. I think you're going to want to highlight the ingenuity and creativity that you applied to still get the academic experience while you were not campus centric. And also have, if you will, the humanity to recognize that the person who's interviewing you probably had some successes in how they adapted in the COVID era, as a people leader or as an employee. And they also had some failures and hard things that, didn't go right. I think you want to make that connection. We can't, if you will, eliminate what this era has brought to all of us. It has impacted all of us. I think it's sort of a seminal thing to discuss. And as a student, whether it's an internship opportunity or graduating, you're going to want to elevate the ingenuity, the tenacity that you are having to apply right now, and highlight that. And if you don't feel that you're succeeding right now the way you want because virtual isn't your learning modality, it isn't the way you would socialize or build social connections, you also have a few months here to still figure it out, because we're going to have COVID around for a few more months. So free yourself and go explore how to make the most of this moment. Because here's the reality. Could we have another unique coronavirus 10 years from now, or some other pandemic, or some other climate catastrophe or whatever? Yeah. And we also have, we have continuous unrest in the world. If you really just look at Disney as a global company, right, there are parts of the world that are going through some pretty remarkable times politically and otherwise. So, you know, highlight that ingenuity, live that ingenuity. If you haven't reached your peak in surviving and thriving in the COVID era, still give it your best go. And so that you can highlight that when you're interviewing 6 months from now, a year from now.
Excellent advice. So another question from our audience, Nathan Perez. Hello, Nathan. Thank you for tuning in as well. He asks, how has putting major films onto Disney Plus, like Mulan and Soul, changed the company's financial agenda?
Yeah, great question. Well, earlier this week, Disney announced a reorganization. Let me explain how that fits in as the answer to that question. So Disney is now bifurcated into two, well, really three towers. Tower number one, I'm going to answer this in the part that got reorganized. Think of our creative engines at the Walt Disney Company, our major movie studios, Disney Live Action, Disney Animation, Pixar. Then you think of the television assets that we have, right? So all of the content that we produce that can end up on the Disney Channel, on ABC, on FX, on Freeform, on Nat Geo. And those towers no longer have profit and loss responsibility, if you will. If you go back and read our announcement, it makes it very clear. Our creatives create. If you go back just before that announcement, the movie studio was responsible for deciding what they were going to greenlight, what they were going to make. They would have the marketing budgets and the distribution processes to get it out to movie theaters. And then they would run it in its afterlife as well, right? Pay one, pay two, free one, free two, various windows, if you will. In the reorg we announced this week, we essentially said our creatives just need to make amazing, great content of all types that can land on any of our platforms, a Disney Plus, a Hulu, an ESPN Plus, broadcast television, cable television, YouTube, you name it. And so the distribution of television, if you will, movies, any serialized content now sits in a completely different division. So the answer is, before, if you made a Marvel film and it didn't earn at least $1 billion, something went wrong. If you made a Star Wars film and it didn't earn at least $1 billion, something went wrong. And then the creatives would have to wonder, what did we do wrong? And the people who were marketing it, what did we do wrong? Whatever. Usually our films do really, really well, so we don't often have to have those conversations. But the thing now that's so fascinating is, with this change in the structure, where the content lands is now under the leadership of a gentleman named Kareem Daniels and our new distribution division. So something like Mandalorian could end up being repackaged, I suppose, right? I'm not saying it will. I'm using these as examples because people can relate. Mandalorian was created specifically for Disney Plus. In the future, could Mandalorian season 5 be packaged up as a 2-hour movie? But it was actually shot as a bunch of episodes. I mean, maybe. The idea is we're freeing our creatives from the responsibility of the profit and loss and the distribution, sales, and monetization. And our distribution arm will put the content wherever it makes sense. So in one market, a film may end up on Disney Plus. Then you go over to Asia Pac and maybe it will end up in theaters. And then you go to another market and it may end up not on Disney Plus, but on Star, our new streaming service for EMEA and Asia Pac that we're launching next year. So it's interesting. We are going to monetize without the rigidity of how this industry grew up over the last 100 years.
Interesting. That's a very forward way of thinking and distributing the content and taking the pressure from the creative team and allowing them just the freedom just to create and produce. How did you come up? You might not know, but how did you come up with that philosophy and that shift? Because that's a major shift that's very unique for the entertainment world.
Yeah, Bob Chapek, our CEO, and Bob Iger, the executive chairman of the board, and who held the CEO role up until earlier this year. We have really good leadership at Disney at the executive level, right? So if you ever go through the corporate side of Disney and look at all of our leaders, I mean, they're pretty darn exceptional. And here's the thing. We were one of the first to recognize that we needed to go direct to consumer and stand up our own streaming business. We were one of the first to recognize that as powerful as our intellectual property is, i.e. the Disney brand and other brands that we already owned, that there were other aligned businesses like the Marvel brand, the Star Wars brand, the Pixar brand. So the company actually for the last 15 years has had a heritage of being unafraid to move into new either intellectual property directions, creative directions, or business directions. And I think the catalyst, I think if COVID hadn't hit, I think Bob Chapek would have made a very similar announcement, call it 24 months from now, 36 months from now. I think we made it now because we recognize that the more all in we are with our streaming platforms, which include Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus, Star India, which is the largest streaming service in the country of India. And then our new Star, not Hotstar is the brand in India. We also have a Star brand that we're creating that essentially think of it as the Hulu for the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Europe. COVID just made us recognize, made Bob Chapek, right, just assess the situation and honestly say that people adapted to this moment in time, not by doing more traditional channel surfing for those that still have cable and satellite. They did more streaming. And he just looked at it and said, I don't think this is going away. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have a dedicated distribution arm of the company as opposed to having distribution spread throughout the company.
Right.
Obviously, an organization of this size, a reorganization of this size will take, several months to execute, get people in their new roles, clarify everything. But it doesn't surprise me that Bob Chapek made this decision. I watched his career. I've been at Disney 14 years. I remember when he took over our consumer products division and he threw out the old playbook and went with a whole new playbook. And then, when you first hear these announcements, like everybody, right, you kind of scratch your head. What does this mean? Do I really understand it? Not everything was announced, right? Because sometimes an announcement will be followed by smaller announcements over time as more details become clear. But Chapek, this is very norm for him, right? If he sees an opportunity to reshape a business on behalf of the shareholders, stakeholders, fans, he'll do it.
Interesting. You use the term unafraid. I want to ask you, I kind of equate that to being courageous. How has the quality of being courageous benefited your career throughout your time as a professional?
Yeah. All right, graduated from Cal State Fullerton 1991 from the School of Business, concentration in finance. I spent my first year in finance. So I am doing consumer lending at first, then I move into merger and acquisition. Then I move into kind of this really large scale financial management for major transformation projects. Now I'm 10 years out from graduating. I'm living up in Michigan where my wife is getting her PhD. I'm also getting my MBA part-time in the evenings. And I am the finance manager for a very major technology project at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. And just so you know, up there, they are not only the insurer, they own the hospitals, the doctor networks. It's like one-stop shopping. And I was about a year into that project, running the finances. I mean, tens and tens of millions of dollars for a complete technical transformation of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan in healthcare. And one day, the project leader to whom I reported, who was a technologist, kind of had a bad day and just walked away from the job. And so the chief technology officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan pops over to my desk a few hours later and breaks the news to me. And I'm like kind of shell shocked, like, oh my God, who's going to lead this project? Oh, and by the way, this project's culmination was Y2K. For those of you that have not heard it, but right, that's when lots of computer technology could fail. And so here we are 6 months before Y2K, still massive deliverables across the entire Blue Cross Blue Shield organization to deliver. The CIO, Ray Kahn, calls me into his office, tells me the news, and then says, you're taking over. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm the finance guy. I'm not a technologist. And he said, no, I'm not after a technologist right now. I'm after a leader. Go. You're running this thing. He says, oh, by the way, tomorrow morning, 600 people report to you. You're going to go down to the auditorium and you're going to, right, give a rah-rah speech, of sorts. So anyway, at the end of the day, I really had this much larger responsibility than I had ever imagined. And what I learned from that moment, and lots of other career moves along the way, is the power of yes. And so I learned to pretty soon, like imagine, that project ends up completing on time. Life is good. I'm working with amazing people. I am learning technology on the fly. And then people would ask me, are you a technologist? And I would just be like, yeah, well then good. We have another project for you. Fact is, I've never been formally trained as a technologist. I've learned it in stunning detail, but I've self-taught myself. My formal education is coming out of the School of Business,
Yeah.
right, at Cal State Fullerton. By the way, in terms of sort of that flexibility and the power of yes, if you will, I've been in pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, healthcare, automotive, robotics, entertainment. Those are the major industries. Oh, telecommunications that I have worked in my career. All of those have come by being flexible. None of them are because I'm an expert in any of those industries. I think what probably appeals to people is my track record. No matter what you've thrown my way, I've dedicated myself to becoming fastly expert and bringing the culmination of knowledge that each of those steps along the way have given me, and knowing how to apply that differently, but benefit that knowledge to whoever needed me next. And within Disney, because we've changed so much in the 14 years I've been here, again, it's the same thing. It's throw an opportunity my way, you're going to get a yes from me. I'm going to go find a way to make it work.
I love that. I love that. Paige, what follow-up question do you have? I see you ready.
Yes. So I really enjoy this explanation of how you got to where you're at. And I would just like if you would speak a little more about some of the favorite roles, or what aspects of those roles were really the most enjoyable for you.
Yeah. So here's what I like in any role. And right now I'm an employee. I spent 20 years as a consultant. By the way, if you go really, really far back in time, 35 years ago, when I was a freshman at Cal State Fullerton, I was also a Jungle Cruise skipper to help pay the bills at Disneyland.
How were your jokes?
They were good. I got a couple writtens because every now and then I would push the boundaries, and 18-year-olds sometimes don't know where the boundaries are, so I found out. Okay. Here's what I look for in any role and what I enjoy in any role. I enjoy, and this is the hard part about this COVID era and a digital virtual relationship. In any role where I can find my tribe, if you will, people who are there to support me and that I can support them, that's what I look for. I've never been a fan, by the way, right, I'm married to a psychologist. I'm not a fan of dysfunction. I don't look for people that create dysfunction, that create challenges, that are self-centered. Those are things that I don't enjoy. So the first thing on any role is, if I'm around people, if I can find the people, if I can find my tribe, I always feel better when I have a success network around me. I imagine, right, for everybody who's on, students, it can be pretty lonely if you don't have a tribe, if you will, right? Whether it's in a class or in the business school or at Cal State Fullerton at large. So, to me, that's always one of the key things to enjoying any role, is finding the people that, you can help make successful and they can help make you successful. The other thing is, I don't like steady state roles. So for me, it's always about transformation. So at Nachi Robotics, which is one of the largest producers of robotics for things like automotive and aircraft manufacturing, we were working on programs to expand Nachi's footprint at Ford Motor Company. I was a consultant at Nachi. And for me, it was just really exciting because we were seeing that the transformation of the most dangerous and laborious parts of the job on a factory floor could be automated. And we had to also win the trust rate. Michigan, it's very unionized. There had to be also the challenge of, finding the upside for the union staff to say, this robot isn't replacing me, this robot, and there's dogs.
There's a dog. A delivery is coming.
Yep. That there is absolutely the empowerment that the worker can move to tasks that humans are uniquely capable of, right? And so we would go and do those in any role. I've always loved that there's a transformation, that there is an outcome that is not operational, like, hey, just keep a steady state and successful. Find a few extra percentage points of profit. That's not appealing to me. Roles that transform are appealing. So at Disney, I've been in one division the whole 14 years, but I have had many different jobs within enterprise tech. And over the years, I would say the things there that in the roles that I've enjoyed the most, they have always been where I'm the closest to the creatives. The more I am close to the creatives that make the content and the product that people love, all the better, which, if you were to follow my Instagram, you would see wherever it's safe and legal by Disney standards to post, I will. And, what I don't post is I'm having lunch at the commissary. Usually I'm posting that, hey, I'm on the red carpet, for a Star Wars premiere, or just left Imagineering because I can't take photos inside of Imagineering, but, just had a chance to see something new and exciting coming to Walt Disney World, right?
Yeah.
I love when my job can intersect with creatives because they, if you will, they sort of dismiss what isn't possible. That's one of the joys of working with creatives. They liberate you to be inventive because that's sort of what they're paid to do. So they don't think of the world the way maybe someone who has classical business training or a technologist, which I have become over the last 20 years. So those are the roles I like. I like being around people that, opportunities that are disruptive and people that are supportive, and I love being around creatives. You're not going to find a better job than Disney for that.
Excellent. Yeah. So we have another question from the audience, actually two parts. So Alex M, thank you, Alex, for tuning in. She says, hi, Darren. Thank you for speaking with us. My question is, what are some of the ways you see enterprise technology, since we just spoke about that, having a role in helping Disney parks transition back to opening up? We also had a follow-up in terms of what is Disney doing to make sure you can open up the parks safely? That's always a general question as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, Alex, let me give you an example. The wireless service at the theme parks is supplied by enterprise technology. When Disneyland reopens, and Disney World is already reopened, we expanded either Wi-Fi and or LTE access with our telecom. Enterprise tech is so massive, we have our own wireless and telecom and networking massive tower within enterprise tech. And so we expanded that network connectivity so that mobile order would be more readily accessible and performant. In other words, when you go to load the app, place that order, get notified that your food is ready, that network connectivity or latency or slowness would not be a problem. So we have been deploying expanded network capability wherever we've been reopening so that mobile order can happen. And now this will actually lend then into what are we doing for safety? Let me explain what mobile order has to do with safety. You want folks to stand in line close to each other as infrequently as possible, right? I mean, we all know that when you go to the grocery store, you try to navigate socially distancing while you're shopping. You get to the cashier, either whether you're self-checking out or having a cashier do it, you're trying to keep 6 foot apart, right? In our parks, anything we can do to make it easier for people to avoid the queues or reduce their time in a queue or their need to be in a queue, that reduces risk. So mobile order allows someone to not wait in the line around a bunch of other people to place their food order. It also means that they only show up to pick up their food when their phone and the app on their phone that we provide says, hey, it's ready. And so we are able to give guests first the experience of mobile order through the enhanced networks that we've been building out through enterprise technology. But the other part of it is we're just supporting safety so that people don't have to do traditional queuing and be in close proximity to each other. We allow these transactions to largely occur from the safety of your phone, where you want it to occur, where you feel most safe. And then you come up and have this very quick interaction to grab your food and then move on to where you want to enjoy it, and also, control your own safety by social distancing. So that I combine two questions into one answer, if that helps.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. So Nina, hello Nina, thanks for tuning in. She has a question talking about, has the revenue grown more through subscriptions on Disney Plus than theme parks? But I also wanted to add on to that William, hello William, thank you for joining us. Since the beginning of COVID, has Disney's revenues from streaming increased compared to what you were forecasting? That's kind of the same question in doing.
Yeah, so first, because we're publicly traded, what I will do is just, clarify public information that we have released. And I'll also encourage anybody who's a big Disney fan, our investor earnings call is early next month, and we always talk about these topics. So certainly theme park revenue was deeply impaired because of the closures. The closures began in Shanghai, cascaded to Hong Kong, and then to Japan, then over into Paris, and then the virus hit here, and the parks went down here, and cruise ships quit carrying passengers, etc. So if you look at Disney's revenue, The theme parks have enjoyed significant growth because of per capita spending, each guest spending more because we have more to offer, and we have also more premium experiences. So, that's part of it too. And so the parks were on a really successful run, and then we've been expanding the footprint through, for example, the opening of Shanghai Disney Resort. So revenue right now is deeply impaired because we're only running our parks at 25% capacity or thereabouts, depending on which park you're talking about. And we are going to be impaired until the virus passes. If we kind of reflect back on one of my earlier answers, the parks division, which, by the way, it's easy to say parks. I always have to think of it one step further. The segment within Disney is called Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products. So Josh Tomorrow, who runs the theme park division, in that division is also our consumer products business. And so all those amazing, toys and things that you love, or books that you buy, or video games, right? All that fits in his area, as well as Disney stores and Shop Disney Online, etc. So, those businesses are going to have a long haul back. We've been very, in our earnings calls and announcements, we always talk about that. We've also talked about the Disney Plus. In fact, we acknowledged it in the reorganization announcements earlier this week, that our streaming businesses overall have grandly exceeded our high-end estimates. And that's Disney Plus, that is Hulu, that is Hotstar in India, and that is ESPN Plus. Now, some of this is because we also have an option to bundle here in the United States, right? Keeping in mind, I'm answering this pretty US-centric because everyone can relate to it. I definitely could go to other markets, but Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus is available as a bundle. Means someone might really be a sports fan, and there would be a few shows on Hulu that they like, and they really may not even care about Disney Plus. I hate to say that because everyone I know loves Disney Plus, but maybe someone's indifferent. So you'll pick up people who might, get one of our products just out of the bundle. What we then see is they start to explore it, and they really love it, and their retention, is great, and then they just stay with us forever. Wall Street, by the way, right, just business majors, Wall Street loves streaming. Streaming revenue, or really I should call it subscription revenue, whether that's streaming like a Disney Plus, which next month, right, we'll announce our latest subscription numbers and so forth. But if you're Microsoft, you've got two. If you think outside of my industry, you have two big battles in the video game industry: Sony with PlayStation, Microsoft with Xbox. There are more Sony PlayStation sold than Xbox. But if you look at how Wall Street looks at those, they view Microsoft as the winner because of the streaming Game Pass option. And so it's interesting, right? You can actually have a smaller business and have higher multiples because that idea of not having to create a new sale, and sales are expensive, right? Marketing is expensive. That idea of just that person who's committed to that recurring revenue to you as a business, that also brings predictability. How much should I invest and what should I do? So for Disney, the long way of also bringing that back now to Disney, Wall Street really does love, it appears, right? I'm not an analyst anymore. That was my first 10 years. But Wall Street loves the fact that our streaming businesses have been embraced, that the quality is there, that they are growing above our expectations. We've been open, that we had high expectations. They've blown them out of the water. And I expect, obviously there's going to be a content slowdown because of COVID. But what's in that pipeline right now, right? Writers get to work right now. Pre-visualization people get to work right now. Animation gets to work right now because they're not on a soundstage, right?
Right.
There is a lot of content coming, and our streaming businesses are going to continue to be absolutely successful. I have no doubt about it. And stay tuned for the earnings announcement next month. All
right. So as we kind of come down the home stretch of this interview, I want to go back to when you were 21 and maybe you had just graduated from Cal State Fullerton. What advice would you give your younger self based on what you know now? And then I have a follow-up question for you after that. Yeah, the advice would have been to start networking earlier. I think I waited too close to graduation to really begin. Right, and that was before LinkedIn. That was before social media. That was before, right, a long time ago. But I had underestimated how long it took to build networks of people that were interested in you, empathetic, and wanted to support you. So I came out graduating in the recession of 1991 and under-networked.
Now, here's the funny thing. I was super involved as a student. I was an officer in the student government most years. I was well known to Joel Plummer Cobb and then Milton Gordon, who came afterward. I was on the academic senate as a student rep. I was supremely networked within Cal State Fullerton. It turns out that that wasn't enough networking, right? I needed networking, obviously, to where I was going next, which was outside of Cal State Fullerton. So I would have networked a whole lot more. I would have started probably 2 years before graduating to really start to master that.
Yeah.
What was the other part of your question?
I'm going to ask you now. That's great advice. I think Paige can attune that at the first day of class, I talk about networking like right away because it's so important. So, and that was not planned. Everyone out there watching and Paige, we didn't plan this answer. So next, Sean Galloway. Hello, Sean. Thank you also for tuning in. I appreciate that. What inspired you to work for Disney?
Yeah. So if you go back 35 years ago, I wanted to, if you look at my yearbook from the mid 80s, it said, what will you be 10 years from now? And I said, I'll be the president of Disneyland.
All right. All right.
I was already a fan of Disney, and I was overjoyed to be coming to Cal State Fullerton with such a great business school. And then the opportunity to go work at Disneyland to help support my finances and do that. What made me come back to Disney as a professional after 20 some years of doing consulting work in so many industries, as I highlighted a few minutes ago, is that I realized that I loved learning and everything I said still stands. But what I really learned is I don't consume robotics, and I'm healthy. I don't consume pharmaceuticals. So the industries that I was working in while I was helping to transform them and drive advances in technology, I wasn't directly getting anything from it, if you will, except, the career satisfaction. And I kept thinking about how much I love Disney and how, we would vacation around Disney. We would go to Disney movies. And I kind of thought, how cool it would be to go back to my first, business love, the Walt Disney Company. And actually, what I do during the day, I can then go consume and enjoy in my personal life, my family life, my life with my friends, and know that I had a role in that. And it felt like now I could bring everything full circle. And that is exactly what's happened.
Awesome. So I'm going to turn over to Paige. You can ask kind of your final question, then I'll follow up with one, and then we'll let Darren continue his day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of us students, especially in this entertainment and hospitality management concentration, can attest to wanting to combine their passion with their career. So one thing I would like to know is why you decided to get your master's in business administration and how you've taken the things you've learned there and implemented them into your career.
Sure. My MBA focused on marketing. And in particular, there's two things that I really love outside of the technologist that I become. I love psychographics and really that idea of market segmentation. And I love microeconomics, what drives that incremental purchase, whether that's someone who becomes a subscriber of Disney Plus, which means they're making an incremental purchase to pay us that fee, whether it's 1 month or for the rest of their life. And so here's the thing. I really believe that in more ways than one, that when people consider how in the entertainment hospitality marketing space, when you want to combine that passion and bring it full circle and make it your career, this is going to sound so cliche, but I'm old enough to know if you don't find that part of that world that you love and are deeply connected, you're going to really, really be unhappy. So I do expect that everybody is introspective and really thinks about, are they in love with the glamour of the industry or big, beautiful, hotels and, being like the controller for a major property or whatever. I just hope that everyone is open-minded, to what it means to be in these industries and explores them in depth. And also, if I really go back to where I was 30 minutes ago, I hope you'll also switch it up a lot. So if you really say, I really want to be on the business side of Golden Voice, right? And really be around event finances and, business partnerships, that's cool. But then what's next after that? Where do you take this skill that you've gained from Cal State Fullerton, this degree, and pull it all around? And also, what are your side interests? So I just mentioned I loved, why did I get my MBA? I got it because I also wanted to explore things. By the way, I had already made, I was in that transition into technology. So why the MBA when I was moving into tech? Like I said, I loved the idea of consumer behavior, purchasing behavior, and how do I use all that now? I use it now because I really, really honestly and deeply have to make a lot every day of decisions that have to be sold.
Mhm.
Just because you're an executive does not mean that what you say goes. And so I take my psychographic knowledge, my marketing knowledge, all that I gained in my MBA, and I apply it to try to convince others that the technology direction I want to go is the right way.
Nice.
So yeah, it's that.
Always selling, always selling. Love it. Final two questions for you. First off, if there were 1, 2, or 3 books that you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and read them immediately, what books would you recommend?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend Bob Iger's book. It came out about a year ago, and what's funny is it stops just short of COVID by about 6 months, and it's a ride of a lifetime. And it talks about Bob's career starting off as a rather average weatherman, and then ultimately he becomes the CEO of Disney over the years. So I would really recommend that. Here's what I would also recommend. I'm going to recommend a non-business book.
Okay, we love it. We love it.
Yeah, so Ray Bradbury wrote a book called Dandelion Wine, and it's a fascinating book around how imagination and serious social issues come together in a Ray Bradbury stylized point of view. And here's why. I mean, it may sound completely off track, but why do I recommend that kind of book, that book in particular? I think we all have to live in some private creative space where we can dream about our personal lives, what we wish the world to be. And we are also dealing in an era, right, where we have to confront a lot of things in society that are not going right. And I think Dandelion Wine just reminds me, and maybe will help you, see the power of the imagination of the young protagonist in the book, the serious social issues that he becomes aware of and faces, and also the whimsy of letting his imagination kind of take hold and envision a better world. So I've got one business book, and then I've got one other book that just, I think, kind of profoundly talks about how we can use all the elements outside of business to maybe envision a world that's better, and face head-on challenges.
Excellent recommendations. Finally, as we have most of our audiences about to graduate, kind of come out into this working world, any last minute words of wisdom or advice as we get to start that stage of our lives?
Yeah, well, so certainly anybody who's graduating in the next year will still be looking at an impaired economy, even if COVID vaccines are well on their way, which they probably will be, but we're going to be looking at an economically impaired world. So here's the thing. I would really, really ask everybody to not give up on what you really, really love, kind of 5 minutes ago what I was talking about, and be very open. So you're coming out of the entertainment hospitality management space. Man, you are going to have to really, really be wide-eyed open about opportunities that may, like I said, maybe your dream is, to be the controller for Golden Voice and be in the music industry and the person behind the finances of, of a Coachella or something, right? Maybe that's not going to happen right now, but maybe you can find, a position that is still in the industry, but completely different. And now I'm going to tell you, I think you're going to have to. We are just going to look at a 36 to maybe 48 month long recovery. New grads are going to have a somewhat difficult time. But I don't want you to abandon the industry. I just want you to be flexible within the industry. So do that.
Excellent advice. So first of all, Darren, thank you very much for spending time with us. Really appreciate your openness, your authenticity, and just your advice for all of us. Paige, thank you for being an amazing co-host in our premiere. So thank you. If you're watching this, please subscribe to us on YouTube. We're trying to get to 100 followers so we can open up some more features. So do that. Also, tune in. I believe we'll have our second episode in 2 or 3 weeks. So pay attention for announcements. And in the interim, everyone out there, you, Darren, and you, Paige, please stay safe. And we just really appreciate your support and knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, Titans reach higher. Keep strong, guys.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.